Welcome to our webinar on using performance-based assessments and rubrics to assess your students' ability to use French. By the end of this video, you will be able to explain what performance-based assessments are and are not, identify the parts of an IPA, utilize the resources in EntreCultures to have your students do performance-based assessments, and grade and provide feedback on those with rubrics. Many people still think this is how it should look when students are taking a test, but how we assess our students in the world language classroom has changed. It's no longer about just seeing what students know with the test. We want to see what they can do with what they know. Let's look at 3 types of assessments. The first type is an achievement assessment. This is what we have traditionally used to assess our students in our classes. It is where students show us what they know about a language, repeating much like a parrot. We are talking about those fill in the blank or matching vocabulary tests or conjugation tests for verb tenses. We see what our students have memorized, but these types of tests don't show us if the students can actually use that knowledge to communicate. These tests can often be more of a test to find out what our students don't know. The next type of test, then, is a performance assessment. In this type, students take what they have learned throughout the unit and then do something with the language. So, for example, on a unit on getting around the city, the students will need to look at a map and have a conversation about where things are located or how to get from one place to another. And the third type is a proficiency assessment. This is where we plop students down in a real situation where they have to use all the language they have ever learned to communicate what's needed. Although I'd love to be able to take my students abroad each quarter to assess their proficiency, that's not terribly realistic. So in a proficiency-based program, what do? Well, we give performance-based assessments that will help increase their proficiency, so that they are ready for those real-world situations. I once heard a great analogy of performance and proficiency. The analogy uses a brick wall. Each time we assess using performance-based assessments, our students are adding another brick to their wall. That wall is their proficiency. With enough bricks, they will eventually have a good, sturdy wall of proficiency. So, to summarize, when we assess, we need to move the focus from what students know about the language to what the students can do with the language. Let's first look at the formative assessment program in EntreCultures. The formative assessments are called J'avance. Here we have an example of a J'avance formative assessment in Level 1, Unit 3. There are 3 J'avance formative assessments per unit. Each J'avance will have performance-based tasks in the different modes of communication. In this example, in Étape 1, it's a presentational writing task. In Étape 2, it's an interpretive reading. And in Étape 3, we have an interpersonal speaking task. Notice the can-do statements next to each task in the book. In the book, there's a brief description of the task, but the resources for students to complete them are found online in Explorer. Within each unit folder, there is a folder for each J'avance. Here is where you'll find all the resources to have the students complete the formative assessment. Also, online in the resources pour les enseignants, you'll find another copy of the rubric and both student and teacher editions of the PDF with the activities of the tasks. The teacher edition is the answer key. You might be wondering why there are bleu, blanc, and rouge versions of these formative assessments. That's because the assessments are tiered. Blanc is the at-level version. Bleu offers additional support for the students who may be struggling a bit, and rouge is for advanced students who can handle a little bit of a challenge. Let's look a little closer at Étape 1, the presentational writing task. It is asking students to write the first email to a new e-pal. On the right, you see the task in the PDF from the Online Explorer files we just looked at. This is the at-level blanc version. Students can type the email right in this PDF and submit it electronically, or you can download and print the sheet for your students to do by hand. Or students can complete it in Explorer by typing in their answer and submitting it as an online activity that you can provide feedback for online. The next task is the interpretive one. Here, students are reading a series of sentences that describe their potential e-pals, and they are matching the sentence with the corresponding video. Once again, this can be done in the PDF or as an online activity in Explorer. With these types of online activities, the program will automatically grade the students' responses and provide immediate feedback to them, saving you the time of doing the grading. In the last task, Étape 3, we are assessing the interpersonal speaking mode. Here, students will be discussing their families or a fictitious one. They will do this in small groups. You can have them do this in a small group in front of you, or you can walk around and monitor the conversations as they're happening. If you would like students to record their conversation, you can have them recorded in the classroom forum. Just have one of the students open up the classroom forum and do an audio or video recording of their conversation. I do want to point out that you don't need to do all the tasks in the J'avance formative assessment. For example, if you feel like you've done quite a bit of practice with interpersonal speaking in class, and you know how your students are doing, and they have been given sufficient feedback on their growth there, then perhaps you don't need to spend time on the interpersonal task for this particular formative assessment. Now that students have completed one or more of the tasks for the formative assessment, it's time for you to give feedback. We have a variety of rubrics that you can use to do so. First of all, each J'avance has a single point rubric specifically for that assessment. The single point rubric is the new rubric kit on the block. In this type of rubric, only the meets expectations criteria are given. In this way, we don't limit how they can exceed expectations or let them know the minimum effort they can put into still pass. Instead, we give them what is expected and then note in the right column how they have exceeded those expectations, and in the left column what they need to continue to work on in order to meet expectations next time. Next, there's a general J'avance rubric that can be used with any of the J'avance assessment tasks. You'll notice that the domains are similar to those that Actful uses in their rubrics. We also have general analytic rubrics in each of the 3 modes of communication. There are actually 4 of these because the presentational mode has a separate rubric for presentational writing and presentational speaking, which is the one you see here. And the last type of rubric is the general holistic rubric. Once again, there are 4 of these, just like we had for the analytic ones. Here we have an example of the interpersonal holistic rubric. So now let's move on to summative assessments and look at the parts of an IPA and what those look like in EntreCultures. An IPA is a performance-based assessment, like we talked about earlier. It has tasks in all 3 modes of communication. The interpretive, where students are going to listen to or read something. Then the interpersonal task, where students will have some sort of conversation, either oral or written, about what they read. And then they will do a presentational task, where students will share what they learned in the previous 2 tasks, either by writing or speaking. You can see these tasks are all interconnected. That's why it's called an integrated performance assessment, as opposed to just 3 separate performance tasks like we saw in the J'avance formative assessments. The most typical order of tasks in an IPA is doing the interpretive task first. then the interpersonal, and then finishing up with the 2 presentational. However, this does not have to be how it is done. The task can be done in any order. It just depends on how the IPA is set up. We're going to look at an IPA from EntreCultures 1, Unité 1. In the EntreCultures series, the IPAs are called J'y arrive and are at the very end of the unit, as they are the summative assessments. In the textbook, you will see a brief description of each task. The actual resources for the IPA are online in the Explorer course. Each unit has a folder labeled J'y arrive, where you can find everything you will need to have your students to complete the assessment. Each assessment starts with essential questions and an authentic context for the assessment. In this case, the context is about choosing an exchange student to host and getting to know each other before he or she arrives, and introducing yourself to the student's family as you will be visiting them next year. In this IPA, the first task is the interpretive one. You can tell by the video camera icon that it will be video viewing task. It says that students will watch 2 videos, one from Ariane and one from François, so that they can decide which one they want to invite to be their host, brother, or sister. These videos can be found online in that folder I showed you earlier. Also in this folder is where students will have the activities to complete while viewing the videos. You can see that there are various étapes or steps to this. The first time, the students are watching and listening very broadly for certain vocabulary words. The second time, in étape 2, they are reading for more specific information to complete the identity cards. And in étape 3, they must decide which sentences refer to François and which refer to Marianne. Students can type directly into this PDF and submit it electronically, or you can print it and have the students write their answers on it and turn it in a more traditional format. After completing the 3 steps, students will decide which of the 2 students will better fit in with their own family and will proceed to write them an email in the task. The next task is the interpersonal mode. The icon, the letter, tells us that the students will be writing an email. There are a few ways to complete this task. First, you can do it traditionally by pointing out the PDF from Explorer and having them write it out and turn it in. You could also just project the PDF and have students write the email on a separate piece of paper. However, this entire task can also be done online in one of 2 ways. The first way is to have students type directly onto the PDF and submit it electronically. They can also write and submit it in Explorer with the online activity you see here. In this case, students type up their email messages in the text box and submit it, and then you can highlight anything you want in their writing and leave them a note to provide feedback to them online. The last task is the presentational one, and the icon indicates that it is a recorded speaking activity. In this case, the students will be creating a video blog to introduce themselves to the family they will stay with when they travel to Quebec or France. Notice the checklist to support students in writing their script for the video and in creating it. They also have access to the task online and can record their video in Explorer and submit it so you can then provide either oral or written feedback to them right there online. Students also make cultural comparisons between themselves and the 2 exchange students, which they post in the online forum. Each J'y arrive IPA has a specific rubric to use in assessing and giving feedback. You can see that the tasks for all 3 modes of communication are included in this rubric. This IPA is from Level 1, Unit 1, so there are only 3 levels of proficiency that students are being assessed against. However, starting in Unit 4 of Level 1, and for the rest of the series, there are 4 levels of proficiency in these rubrics. These rubrics align with ACTFL's performance descriptors and proficiency guidelines. If you have any further questions about assessing your students using the J'avance or J'arrive assessments, please don't hesitate to reach out to us so we can provide you the support you need. Have a great day.